The Diplomat they couldn't break. The Terran envoy ship Peacekeeper dropped out of FDL in orbit above Droska 4, capital of the Vraxii sector and a shining jewel in the core of the Galactic Empire. Its arrival did not go unnoticed. Imperial warships tracked it from a distance, their weapons charged but not fired. Yet, inside the sleek silver hull, Ambassador Dr. Alina Morieva stood poised, clad in her formal diplomatic blacks. Her presence commanded respect, though she was neither tall nor heavily built. It was her voice, her eyes, clear steel and relentless calm, that made seasoned warriors falter and angry senators lower their tones. She studied the approach vector from the viewport, arms behind her back. Any response from the Empire? She asked her aide, Lieutenant Carver. Carver shook his head. Nothing but standard docking instructions. No welcome party. Alina's lips barely curved. They want us nervous. Let them try. The Empire had been at the brink of war with the Terran Confederation for decades, an icy standoff that occasionally flared into skirmishes. The most recent incident had gone too far. 3 Terran freighters destroyed near the disputed Zenth Expanse, over a planet the Empire had illegally occupied. Rather than send a war fleet, Earth sent her. Alina Morieva, the woman who had de-escalated the Croth hostage crisis with nothing but a translator and a tea set. The negotiator who made the Blood Priest Kings of YLL bend the knee without firing a shot. Her success rate wasn't just high, it was legendary. But the Empire didn't play by the same rules. The landing platform was a brutalist monolith of dark metal and sweeping spires. No banners, no music, no diplomatic ceremony. A detachment of Vraxii guards awaited, tall insectoid creatures clad in gleaming obsidian armor, mandibles twitching. At their head stood Lord Thurzin, Imperial Minister of Outer Territory Enforcement. Tall, robed, with piercing yellow eyes and a voice like serrated glass. Ambassador Morieva, he said without preamble, we received no formal warning of your arrival. Alina didn't blink. Article 17 of the Interstellar Peace Accord grants a member world the right to immediate diplomatic arbitration following an interstellar incident. You destroyed 3 unarmed ships, Lord Thurzin. They entered restricted Imperial space. They were civilian vessels, carrying humanitarian aid. A silent standoff. Lord Thurzin's mouth parts curled upward in what passed for a smile. Come, let us discuss this inside. The negotiation chamber was more akin to an interrogation room. No windows, a single table, no refreshments, just cold light and colder stares. Alina sat, legs crossed, datapad in hand. Across from her, Thurzin and 2 other high-ranking Imperial officials presented their version of events, filled with falsified logs, manufactured coordinates, and outright lies. She listened, took notes, and then began dismantling their case with surgical precision. No independent verification supports your location data, she said. And here are 3 sources, one from your own sector traffic authority, that contradict your timeline. The Empire is culpable. Thurzin's smile faded. You overstep. Your accusations are not only false, they border on treasonous. Treason? Against whom? I serve Earth, not the Empire. The room turned ice cold. One of the aides whispered something in Thurzin's ear. He stood slowly. You insult us with your presence and your tone. The Empire will not tolerate Terran arrogance, disguised as diplomacy. Alina stood as well. Then the Empire will tolerate the consequences. She tapped her wrist. A recorded message began uploading. Evidence of the Empire's violations, to be transmitted to the Confederation and every major neutral system. The kind of thing that triggered sanctions, blockades, and possibly war. She didn't see the blow coming. The guards seized her before she could react. Carver was shot dead on sight. Her wrist device was smashed. The room went dark. She was taken to a black site, prisoned deep beneath the spires of Droska 4. Stripped of her credentials. Declared a spy. What followed was not negotiation. They tried everything. Drugs, neural suppressors, memory probes. They wanted access codes, Earth's response plans, military intel. Alina gave them nothing. Even when they cut into her, even when they pumped her full of bio-trackers and mind burners, she held. One guard whispered, "She doesn't scream." Another said, "She doesn't break." After 12 days, they decided they were done trying. On the 13th day, a broadcast went out from Droska 4. The Galactic Empire's media net carried it live. The execution of Terran ambassador Alina Morieva, convicted spy and terrorist. Bound and bruised, she stood on a public platform surrounded by cheering elites. The blade of the execution drone gleamed in the dusk sky. Lord Thurzin made a speech. "Let this be a message to the Terran Confederation. You do not threaten the Empire." As the blade descended, Alina Morieva lifted her eyes to the camera. Calm, unflinching, a whisper escaped her lips. "Do not forget me." On Earth, the transmission cut short. The Confederation Council watched in silence. Some called for war. Others wept. But one division remained eerily quiet. The Department of Unconventional Response Protocols, Project Velis. They had waited for this moment. Not because they wanted her to die, but because they had prepared for what came next. Dr. Morieva was dead. But that was not the end of her story. That was the beginning of Baba Yaga. The long night begins. The Imperial cruiser Veiltran drifted in silence near the outer rim of the Droska sector. Its last communication was a routine check-in. No distress call, no alarms, just silence. When an Imperial scout ship arrived 3 days later to investigate, they found it empty. No bodies, no signs of violence. Every crew member gone, as if the ship had simply been abandoned mid-duty. One corridor bore a strange, hand-carved inscription in the metal. "The Baba Yaga comes." The investigating officer, a junior Vraxii named Urzek, filed a report, certain it would be buried by command. Instead, the opposite happened. Imperial analysts were dispatched. Security across the sector tightened. Officers whispered in mess halls about the curse of the Peacekeeper. Officially, nothing was confirmed. Unofficially, fear began to creep through the ranks. Back on Earth, beneath kilometers of ice and shielding in a Terran black site, known only as Velis Deep, a figure stood before a mirror, or what passed for a mirror. It was a reflective alloy, unshatterable, used not for vanity but diagnostics. The woman staring back was Alina Morieva, but not as she once was. Her skin had a strange, too perfect sheen, nanite infused, capable of rebuilding itself after damage. Beneath it, carbon-weave muscles and a reinforced skeletal lattice. Eyes augmented with multi-spectrum sensors. Reflexes faster than a Vraxii Death Guard. A brain laced with symbiotic AI known as Kashii, designed to enhance decision-making, predict tactics, and survive trauma. She touched her own cheek. It felt human. It was not. "I remember dying," she said aloud. A voice, hers and not hers, replied from within. "You were preserved, scanned, restored. Your mind was seeded with purpose. Directive, complete justice cycle. I remember pain, and now you deliver it." She stepped away from the mirror and into the next room. A row of weapons lined the walls, silent, deadly, precise. All Terran black tech, most illegal by any galactic standard. Alina, no, not Alina now. Something else. Something born in death. Reached for a curved blade of obsidian-tuned, monomolecular alloy. The name burned itself into her mind. Kashii, that is the Fawn. You call the Black Fawn. She nodded once. Imperial logs began to accumulate reports of incidents across fringe worlds. Outposts blacked out. Supply ships drifting. Entire listening posts found destroyed. No heat signatures, no weapon damage, just surgical erasure. On Krell Tarn Station, a Vraxii admiral's quarters were found sealed from the inside, his body contorted in a grotesque final pose, etched with Terran symbols. Surveillance? Deleted. AI backups? Erased. A message burned onto the floor. An eye for an eye. The phrase was not recognized by the Imperial Translation Network, but among Terran culture experts, it rang with clarity. One analyst, a retired linguist named Varesh, reviewed the patterns and noticed a strange trend. Each location corresponded to someone directly involved in the arrest, torture, or execution of Ambassador Alina Morieva. She's hunting them, Varesh muttered. His assistant laughed. She's dead. Varesh stared at the data, voice grim. Not anymore. In an underground forum used by disaffected Imperial officers, rumors began to spread. Stories too absurd to be true. A black-suited humanoid figure walking through walls. Ships cracking from within as if infected by ghosts. Screams broadcasted from nowhere, and names whispered in the static. They gave her name, the Baba Yaga, not from Imperial folklore, from Terra mythology, an old Earth story of a witch who lived in a walking hut, who punished the wicked and stole the souls of liars. Half protector, half monster, and suddenly the myth had teeth. Meanwhile, Lord Thurzin watched the security footage of his personal transport, a top-level command cruiser, being invaded. The images made no sense. One moment, all systems were stable. The next, the lights flickered, and the ship's elite guards were gone. Gone. No gunfire. No bodies. No breach. Just a shadow, moving too fast to see clearly, leaving behind a single thing. His name, scrawled in blood across a viewport. Thurzin stared at it for a long time. Impossible, he hissed. She's dead. We watched her die. His advisor, General Squorn, cleared his throat nervously. We may not be dealing with her. At least, not as she was. I don't care if she's a ghost, Thurzin growled. I want her gone. He called an emergency council. Psychic assassins, inquisitors, dark code hunters, bio-oracle units. All were mobilized. His orders were clear. If it breathes, and it answers to Morieva, kill it. If it doesn't breathe, kill it twice. But they didn't understand what they were facing. Alina Morieva wasn't a weapon. She wasn't a machine. She was a reminder, a consequence. And Project Velis had not just rebuilt her body. They had enhanced her will. Kashiai's voice whispered within her mind as she stood over her next target, watching the corrupt admiral sleep. This one laughed during your execution. His breath smelled of Terran wine. Confirmed termination. Alina stared at the sleeping form. Her blade hummed faintly. Yes. In the Terran Confederation, officials remained silent. When asked by the Galactic media if they knew anything about the so-called Baba Yaga, they offered shrugs, condolences, and claims of ignorance. Behind closed doors, they watched the data come in. At least 7 high-ranking Imperials gone. No evidence. No survivors. She's exceeding projection thresholds, one scientist murmured. She's become a symbol, another said. No, said the director of Project Velis. She's become something far more effective. The long night had begun. The Empire had killed a diplomat. But they had created something far worse in return. Not a soldier, not martyr. A reckoning, the Baba Yaga hunts. The moon of Krasin Prime spun slowly, a rust-stained rock orbiting a dying star. Once a penal colony, it had been converted into an Imperial intelligence relay, a black site known as Facility Theta 7. Officially, it didn't exist. Off the record, it was where the Empire stored its dirtiest secrets and most valuable war records. At 2:43 standard, every automated defense system in Facility Theta 7 simultaneously shut down. 33 seconds later, the interior lights began to flicker. By 2:45, no one inside was alive. When a scout drone finally arrived to investigate, the facility appeared untouched from the outside. But inside was a horror story written in shadows and silence. Bodies arranged in symmetrical lines, hands folded neatly over their chests, eyes wide open. Every last one. No signs of struggle. No alarms triggered. The security AI had been scrubbed, its core cracked open and filled with Terran code. A single message had been burned into the main operations console. The silence you gave her, she gives to you. The name attached to the incident report. Admiral Cell Trivan, one of the key witnesses at Alina Morieva's show trial. His throat had been cut so precisely that medical bots thought he was still breathing for 3 minutes after death. The Empire tried to suppress the news, but it was too late. The Baba Yaga wasn't just killing. She was sending messages. The High Council of the Empire convened an emergency session aboard the Ebon Throne, their mobile fortress city. Holograms flickered and glitched from the stress of secure encryption. Among the attendees, generals, shadow operatives, inquisitors, and Lord Thurzan himself. His expression a mix of rage and mounting dread. She has become a symbol, barked Inquisitor Velik. Fear is spreading faster than her blade. Whole crews are deserting. Outposts are locking down. We've seen this before. Ideological collapse begins with myth. She's not a myth, Thurzan snapped. She's a Terran weapon. A diplomat, sneered another official. Reborn as a nightmare. Thurzan slammed his clawed hand on the table. She has made it personal. And now, so will I. He activated a holo display of Operation Glass Widow, a protocol designed to flush out enemy infiltrators through AI psychic nets, null drones, and viral ghost hunters. He issued the order to activate every asset the Empire had in the Outer Reach. She wants a war of shadows? We'll give her one. But Alina, no, the Baba Yaga, was already 3 steps ahead. On the agricultural moon of Vindek 9, she appeared in a grain processing tower where Commander Ezek Marlowe was hiding under false ID. Marlowe, a low-level bureaucrat, had signed off on the chemical interrogation drugs used on her during her captivity. When his guards found his remains, they didn't recognize him. He had been surgically disassembled piece by piece, and every vial of interrogation serum in the tower had been emptied and replaced with water. On the walls. Do you feel safer now? Kashiai's voice whispered to her as she moved from mission to mission, infiltration to infiltration. 2 targets remain in the first ring. High value, heavily fortified. Alina crouched atop a floating tram over the molten cityscape of Krillos Prime, cloaked in her stealth mesh, moving with inhuman grace. Thurzan, she asked. Last, we need to break the command chain before we cut off the head. She nodded. Initiate protocol White Veil. In under 20 minutes, she breached an orbital logistics hub responsible for funding and arming the Empire's secret police. She didn't kill anyone. Not immediately. Instead, she downloaded the entire financial database and uploaded it to the Galactic net, routing it through a dozen activist networks, rebel cells, and whistleblower platforms. The Empire's corruption wasn't just exposed. It was amplified. As funds were drained and operations compromised, resistance flared up across the mid-sectors. Entire legions of enslaved species rose up, emboldened by the myth. Not just a Terran weapon, but a justice. A reckoning. The story passed from mouth to mouth, screen to screen. She was killed for speaking truth. Now she hunts for those who silence it. Back in the Velis Deep facility, Earth Command monitored her progress with a mix of awe and fear. She's evolving, said Dr. Mako, Chief Overseer of Project Velis. Kashiai is learning faster than we projected. She's destabilizing an empire, said Admiral Rue. We should be cheering. She's becoming unpredictable, Mako countered. The line between mission and myth is blurring. There was a pause. Then, she hasn't deviated from the justice list, Rue replied. Until she does, we let her hunt. Lord Thurzan fortified his estate on Vorith, a mountainous stronghold layered with psychic dampeners, adaptive AI, anti-personnel fields, and a private army of clone mercenaries. He slept little. He dreamed less. Still, the fear crept in. He was the last name on the original list. The one who had signed Alina's death warrant. The one who had broadcast her execution with the words, "Let the humans mourn their coward." Now, every whisper in the dark felt like a warning. Every security check a moment of dread. He knew what was coming, and yet he could not stop it. One evening, as Vorith's twin moons dipped below the horizon, a minor anomaly registered in the power grid. 2 seconds later, every screen in the estate displayed a still image. Alina's face, bloodied, calm, watching. She wasn't here yet. She wanted him to know she was coming. The Empire had unleashed its arsenal. Terran black sites had gambled with life and death. But it wasn't code or weapons that broke the Empire. It was fear. Fear of the diplomat who wouldn't stay dead. Fear of a woman who turned execution into evolution. Fear of Baba Yaga. The Empire burns. The first explosion rocked the Vorth stronghold at precisely 3 o'clock standard. Not from outside, from within. A thermal core buried under the estate's eastern tower went critical, triggered by a cascade virus, so advanced the Empire's AI security systems didn't even realize they'd been compromised. Doors slammed shut. Escape pods were disabled. Internal defenses turned against their own. Lord Thurzin awoke to the sound of screaming. Not chaos, not disorder, precision. Every corridor she passed through was plunged into shadow. Security drones failed. Comm systems looped static. Body after body fell, not to gunfire or bombs, but to silence. She didn't waste bullets on soldiers who weren't on her list. She moved through them like a ghost, a whisper, a judgment. By the time Thurzin's personal guard mobilized, 70% of his security detail had vanished. Some dead, some too afraid to fight. Some had already surrendered to the myth. He waited in the throne room of his fortress, clad in war regalia, a curved blade in one hand, a plasma pistol in the other. His command console was overridden. His calls for reinforcements jammed. His bodyguard lay slumped at his feet, her throat slit before she could even draw her weapon. The room was empty now. No alarms. No movement. Then, a voice behind him, clear, human calm. Did you think this moment wouldn't come? Thurzin spun, firing blindly. But the Baba Yaga was already gone. A blur of shadow darted across the walls. Then pain, sharp, clean, cut across his arm as his pistol fell from limp fingers. His blade hand followed a heartbeat later. He dropped to his knees, gasping. From the darkness, she emerged. Black combat armor etched with runes of remembrance. A face calm and terrible. Her eyes glowed faintly in the dim light. Not mechanical, not human anymore. Something in between. Something reborn. Thurzin tried to speak. Tried to bargain. Tried to buy his life with whatever scraps of honor or bribes he had left. You're not real, he rasped. You died. Alina knelt before him, inches from his face. I did, she whispered. You made sure of that. He shuddered. Then what are you? She leaned closer. Justice. Her blade hummed softly. Then it sang. And Thurzin's legacy ended in silence. By morning, every major Imperial broadcast was hijacked. The execution of Lord Thurzin played across every known system. But not as propaganda, as warning. The Baba Yaga didn't speak during the broadcast. She didn't gloat. She simply stood over the tyrant's body and looked directly into the camera, her eyes piercing across light years. A single sentence appeared on the screen. Let this be the end. Then the feed cut to black. The Galactic Empire did not collapse in fire and rebellion. It collapsed in fear. Entire sectors fell quiet. Governors abdicated. Military forces refused orders. Puppet rulers fled into deep space. Border worlds declared independence and expelled imperial envoys. And everywhere, they whispered her name. The Baba Yaga, the diplomat they executed, the monster they created. On the far side of the galaxy, the Terran Confederation Council convened in a private session. No press, no official records. Admiral Rue reviewed the reports with grim satisfaction. We didn't send a war fleet. We didn't need to. Dr. Mako nodded. The myth did what no weapon could. And the woman? Another counselor asked. Silence followed. Mako answered softly. She completed the list. Everyone responsible is gone. And now, we don't know. In the void between systems, aboard an unregistered Black Ops vessel, drifting in dark space, Alina sat alone. No crew, no flag, just her, the stars, and the soft whisper of Kashyyyk in her thoughts. Objective complete. Directive neutralized. Do you wish to return? She didn't respond. Kashyyyk continued. You are no longer bound by mission parameters. I was never bound by them, she murmured. Not really. Kashyyyk was quiet a long time. Then what are your orders? Alina closed her eyes. She saw the screams, the flames, the horror of death. Not just hers. Theirs. All of them. I made them afraid. I reminded them what silence costs. But fear isn't justice. She stood, gripping the hilt of Black Fawn. I will become something else now. Kashiai whispered again. What name do you carry? She turned toward the stars. Let them still call me Baba Yaga. But now, I choose why. In the shadows of fallen empires, where tyrants whisper and warlords rise, stories are told of a woman who was executed, who returned from death, who hunted monsters, and who became one, only to destroy them all. Not for vengeance, but so no one else would ever have to.